Hey, good morning, friends. Welcome to the Backshed Bible Study. It's the 3rd of November, 2025. I'm glad to have you here in my shed today. Welcome. So I am back here on this gorgeous Monday morning here in Fair Oaks. I am glad to have you here with me today. It's going to be a fun day. I've got a lot going on. And be excited to have so many of you joining along. Looking forward to some discussion along the way. Today we're going to dig into, is Romans 8:28 really true? That's going to be my title this morning. Is Romans 8:28 really true? Candace, good morning. It is good to have you along here. I know you got a lot that you're looking at in life these days, and I think this might be a fun one for you too. And so many of us that follow along here. So I'm excited about this. I will set some context here in just a minute about why we're going with Romans 8:28 and what led to that. Before that, however, I do want to mention that for those of you here in the greater Sacramento area, don't forget coming up this Saturday, what's Saturday? Today's Monday the 3rd, so Saturday is going to be we'll go with the 8th. That sounds about right. And we're going to be having our Mexico mission trip fundraiser dinner that will be happening at Sunrise. If you haven't picked up your tickets, please do so now. It's going to be a great meal. We're looking at, anyways, just looking at the records today. I think we're going to have about 100 or so folks there coming out to support our youth ministry and our students that will be going to Mexico in February on a fantastic missions trip. So looking forward to that. Don't forget, get tickets. It's not too late to sign up online. Just go to sunrise.church, go to the bottom of the page. You can see the event there is listed at the bottom of the page. You can click the link and get tickets. So you want to be there? Pastor Cord and I were actually already talking this morning. Just looking forward to what's going to be happening there. In the just great world, I'll let you know a few things happening around here, and then we're going to jump into the Bible study for today. In my fun world, let's see here. Yesterday, I was looking out the front yard at my tree. We got a Chinese pistache tree that we put in the yard here a few months back, and it just is not looking very healthy. And so I turned on the sprinklers and realized it hadn't been getting any water in the little bubbler for probably the last month. And so it's got that working. And then I went back over to be sure the sprinkler had turned itself off at the box. And I looked down around the valve box where all of my sprinklers are, and it was soaked wet. The valve box was, which is far away from where anything is getting water, where the valve box is. And so I opened up the box, black widows everywhere. And the box it's sunken down in the ground, but it's about this full of water, about a foot deep of water down in my valve box, which made my valves very clean, by the way, but it made me realize I have a busted valve. So had to, that's going to be a little project, and here's how, in the words of Forrest Frank, we turn lemons into lemonade. Which, hey, y'all, even no matter how old you are, if you can find that song, it's awesome to listen to. But so with that, I need to buy a new valve, which these are specialty valves. They're like $30 at Home Depot. But because it's at Home Depot and so many people at Pastor's Appreciation bought me gift cards to Home Depot, I get a new valve for free. So that was... yeah, that was that. So, yes, I'm going to have to, I went and checked it this morning. The water was, I was going to say melted. The water had subsided, and the Black Widows are still there. So I'm going to have to de-Black Widowfy it before I get in there and stick my arms down there. Probably be wearing gloves for that little operation. So Hey, wanted to show you my coffee mug this morning as well. And if you are one of those that listens on the podcast version, you're going to miss this. But this mug here, check that out. You all know, if I hope you know what that is. That's Winnie the Pooh, and and a little piglet there that's with him. And then this is I'm trying to get this up here. This is the other side of the mug. April and I had an evening out several, about a month ago. We took a date night and tried to return one of our knives to Williams Sonoma that we got for our wedding, which was 21 years ago. Funny, they wouldn't take it, but the handle had broken on a knife. And we had passed through Pottery Barn there up at the old Roseville Galleria, and we were just kind of roaming around Pottery Barn. And maybe this was Williams Sonoma. I think this was actually in Williams Sonoma. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But we found these mugs, right? And here's the thing. This is, good morning, Barb. Good to have you here. Winnie the Pooh, the original Winnie the Pooh book. Illustrated book, but it was my first like legitimate book that I ever read as a kid, and it was so cool. And I found this mug, and I'm kind of looking at April's like, you should get that and I think we were actually out for our anniversary, so that was our anniversary gift to me. Was this coffee mug that I thought I'd share with you all this morning. Oh, it's so good. All right, so. So yeah, that's those. Here's the thing. At the beginning, I like to tell a few little stories while people log on, and then we'll get our discussion going. So there you go. We got Black Widows, but God made lemonade out of lemons in that the valve, even though busted and even though a bit expensive, I get one for free because you all are so kind to me, and someone decided to bless me with a gift of for Pastor's Appreciation. Home Depot gift card. That's it. We're going to jump into Romans 8:28 here in just a second. We're actually not going to spend much time in Romans 8:28. I don't even know why I'm bothering looking it up, because that's one of those verses we all have memorized. So I'm just going to leave that there because I already have my Bible somewhere else. But I was over at my office this morning, and I was just contemplating, God, what do you want me to share with our back shed audience this morning? And I looked up in my bookshelf in my office, and there was this My Utmost for His Highest. I looked at this. I'm like, okay, somebody had given this as a gift to me. And if you all don't know who Oswald Chambers is, he is the one that wrote these, and it's a book full of 365 daily devotions. And but what stopped me in my tracks is the inside of it was signed, and front and back. There's the backside as well. Lots of things, and it was a going away gift that I received at a previous place where I was involved in ministry, not at Hume Lake, but somewhere else. And what's so interesting about this is I was not there very long. It was a very short-lived thing. The didn't go well in the end. Ended up leaving, and kind of my boss and I decided it was probably better for me to move on. He more decided that than me, but we kind of decided that together. And so it was in the midst of a couple of really hard years in my life, and it ended up being a very difficult season altogether. And I'll tell a few more details because I think it helps to set a little bit of context. But I had thought this was kind of the ultimate job, maybe what God had been preparing me for over all the years of my time that I had been working at Hume Lake, and so it was set up to be a pretty big deal, and it was a pretty important position, and even the pay was good, and everything was looking good until I got there, and then it was just like a series of missteps along the way, confusion, not getting along with not working well with the person that I was called to work well with, a couple of poor decisions that I made, and in under a year, it was time to move on, and I wasn't even there a complete year, and 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 to give the timing of this, to help context even more, it was about 2 to 3 years previous to that we had lost our daughter, that our daughter had passed away. It was just a couple of months before this that my dad had died. And then we kind of pick up the whole family and we move. April's pregnant at the time, and then our daughter Audrey is born. So we have a first grader in Peter. Titus is 2 years old, and Audrey is a newborn. And so we're in a new location. We're renting a house great little house, by the way, but God definitely provided that. And I'm coming home every day to April in tears. I'm having a hard time at work. It's not what I thought it was, and the needs were different than I think I was able to provide. It was also a position that probably demanded 80 hours a week of my time, and I wasn't willing to give that kind of time to it, with my family being where we were, and so it was just a hard season. And I mean, we would still look back. April at times would say it was harder than losing our child. That kind of hard, that kind of darkness. And so I look back, and we always look back at that as just being a really, really difficult season. But there's always this moment where we stop and say, if it wasn't for that season and for that happening there, and really, and I'll kind of lay it out the way it was, is my boss and I kind of sat down, and he's looking at me kind of going, hey, one of us needs to go, and it's not me because I'm the boss. So I've changed the words slightly of what he said, but it's pretty close to that. And so we mutually agreed I need to move on, and I did. We felt like we were in a dark time, didn't have a job, and didn't know what was next. And it was in under a month that I got, from the time this went down to till I got a call from Sunrise, and my pathway to Sunrise was very quick. From the first interview to the official job offer was about 3 weeks, which, if any of you know anything about ministry jobs, it does not work that way. Pastoral positions do not work that way. They take months to happen. And this went in 3 weeks. And so it was just clearly God. And April and I both look back at that season and go, God was in that departure. And it took me today to look here and to read some of the things that my employees at that other place had written to me, and some of whom I still keep in touch with to this day, even though we only worked together for a few months, and that I'm super grateful for these people. But it caused me to really reflect on that Romans 8:28, and we know that in all things God works together for the good of those who have been called by his name. Let's read it here in the NIV. It says, we know that in all good things God works together for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Okay? We know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. And that's where I want to kind of launch today is my purpose in going after that job where I was really I thought I was going to be a great camp director. I thought I was going to be, that this was kind of my great moment that I had been called to, and it was in so many ways my purpose to take the job that I did. Even though April didn't want to go and didn't want to do it, she kind of didn't tell me that at the time, and just said, I want him to be happy. I want him to have purpose in what he's doing, and but as I look back, it was really kind of my purpose. But regardless, God was at work, and all things were going to work together here. And interestingly enough, as I look up my utmost for his highest here, and I get to today's devotion here, November 3rd, it says, a bond slave of Jesus. And it gives us Galatians 2:20, all right? Galatians 2:20 that says, I am crucified with Christ. And it is no longer, or in this version says, nevertheless, I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. That must be King James. So I have been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. Okay, and so that's the key part of this is when we're going through hard times, and so to lean back in the Romans 8:28 piece of this, where he says, and Sunshine says hi to you too. She's hanging out down here today. We'll see if we can do a little Sunshine cam here in a minute. But it says, we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him. Okay. So those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose, and with that, being called according to his purpose means that we are crucifying ourselves, that we have been crucified, and it's no longer us. It's no longer us that are living for ourselves, that we are living for Christ, and then we are allowing his Spirit to work and to live and to act in us according to God's will and according to God's purpose in such a way that we can now look back and clearly go, I saw God at work in that. I saw God at work in losing that job that I thought was the ultimate job. I saw God at work in going through that hard physical time maybe that I had. I saw God at work in losing my child. I saw God at work and you fill in the blank, because every one of you right now, I guarantee out there, you have something where you can say, yeah, I did see God at work in that. Or maybe you're being reminded right now, I need to look and see right now in the midst of right where I am, where God at work, because it's kind of hard to see it when you're in the midst of that darkness. So with that, I want to hit two verses today, one out of the Old Testament, one out of the New, that I think are great reminders for us of what it looks like to be crucified. I have been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. The first one comes in Joseph, the son of Jacob, and one of the sons of Jacob, I should say. And you all, you Bibles, you followers of Christ, you know this story, and so I'm going to bring it back up. Joseph, coat of many colors. He's his father's favorite. I was my parents' favorite. And he knew it. All of his brothers knew it. They were envious of him. They were tired of his bragging. He was very braggadocious, and the way he revealed his dreams to his brothers and all of that. The guy, kind of struggled a little bit, but nonetheless, they move forward with their plot to get rid of him because they're sick of him. That's what brothers do, apparently, to their younger brother, and so they sell him into slavery. He ends up down in Egypt. While he is in Egypt, he starts to kind of increase in stature, ends up in the home of Potiphar. Potiphar, interprets a dream, but Potiphar's wife is attracted to him. He ends up in jail, interprets dreams. They still forget about him, but somehow through all of that, he interprets more dreams and ends up in working for Pharaoh and basically running Egypt. He's very shrewd. He is very smart. He is able to put away storehouses of grain because knowing there's going to, I'm not knowing, but there's going to be a famine, and make some very wise strategic decisions in such a way that everyone's coming to Egypt to try to get food as the famine comes, including Joseph's family, Jacob, and all of his sons. And he sends his sons to Egypt to go beg for food. They get down there, and as you know the story, Joseph is overwhelmed as he realizes it's his brothers that are in his presence. He sends them back home. They come back. And then we have this moment in Genesis chapter 45. Let me read it really quickly here. And then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence!" So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, and here's this moment, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" And sometimes we read through these things way too quickly because you got to stop for a second and realize, did he just, oh my goodness, mic drop, whatever it is. I am Joseph. Is my father still living? And they are stunned. It says his brothers weren't even able to answer him because they were terrified. Because suddenly in that moment, their younger brother, who they had picked on, who they were tired of because he was just always rubbing it in that he was daddy's favorite, he had this cool coat, all of that. Joseph is in a position of power, and Joseph can, at this point, it's no longer about food. I have a good feeling here. It has nothing to do with food at this point, what's running through their minds. They are wondering about their own lives because they realize Joseph has the power to put them to death. Like, that's just where it is. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, whatever it is. Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." And when they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt." Okay. And so it's just piling on, right? The one you sold into Egypt. Okay. He says that. He says, "And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." Whew. Just take that in for a second. Take that in for a second. It was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. And so he gets it. It is not, he didn't say it was to save lives that you threw me down into the cistern. He did not say that. He didn't say it was to save lives that I was sold into slavery, that you did this. It was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. And I know that all things work together for the good. Okay? Notice key pieces here. And now here's one. If you want to just dig a little deeper into this one. Okay? Did God cause Jacob's sons to throw Joseph into the cistern there to die? Did God move in the hearts of those boys, those sons, to sell their brother into slavery. Did God lead them to do that? Oh man, this messes with our theology, because then we sometimes we jump too quickly to make that personal. And by the way, the answer to that is a much longer episode of Backshed. We're not going to solve it together, but it's worth thinking about. Okay, in the end, what matters here in this story, and this is what matters more, I think, than if we figure out whether God had decided to make the brothers sell him into slavery or not, or whether God was just working through a bad situation. Okay, so we have that on the theological end. We can worry about that later. I'm going to tell you what's more important is focusing on how we understand the end result. And so when we understand that the end result is that good comes out of bad, almost always good is going to come out of bad. And that's why the Romans 8:28 thing is so important, because we know that all things, not some things, not a thing here or there, is going to work together for the good, but all things, every single one of them. And so as we look at our broken relationships that we are in right now, how is it that God is working through that so that all things are going to be for the good, so that I can look back and go, oh yeah, this was a horrible, horrible thing that I endured. Yet let me tell you what God did. Let me tell you about one more. Okay, this is New Testament, and we'll kind of wrap it up with this one. But I went with, just so you know here, I went with my two study Bibles today. My old NIV study Bible, which I have all marked up, and today I got my new ESV. I say new; it's about 10 years old, but that's my ESV study Bible, and that's one I use when I sit down to do some studying for preaching and so on. Love it; it's a great Bible. Paul. Let's look at Paul. And Saul, this is conversion of Saul, road to Damascus kind of thing. And he has just been converted. But Saul, we're going to get to that, Candace, because I guarantee it, when Joseph was sold into slavery, he was not saying, all things work together for the good. I guarantee it. It was years later when he said this. So, yeah, sometimes we read the Bible so quickly that we miss out on the timelines of the Bible, and it took a long time. You don't get that perspective overnight. Okay, but Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest, asked him for letters of the synagogues at Damascus. This is Acts chapter 9. So that if he found any belonging to the way, men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. Okay, so he was going through, and they were wholesalely taking Christians, pulling them out, beating them up, killing them. That was what Saul did. By the way, there are two perspectives that I'm going to compare and contrast here really quick too. And so we know the story. As he approached Damascus, light from heaven, falling to the ground, he hears the voice, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Who are you, Lord? And he said, I'm Jesus, who you're persecuting. Rise, enter the city. You'll be told where to go. The men who were traveling with him were speechless. They heard the voice, but saw no one. Saul rose from the ground. Although his eyes were opened, he saw nothing. So they led him by the hand into Damascus. For 3 days he was without sight, neither ate nor drank. There he meets Ananias. The Lord said to him in a vision, Ananias, here am I, Lord. The Lord says to him, rise, go to the street called Straight at the house of Judas. Look for a man from Tarsus named Saul, for he is praying. And he has seen a vision of a man named Ananias come and lay his hands that he might receive sight. So Ananias, fully knowing who Saul is, says this. Lord, I've heard about this man. I've heard about this guy. He's done a lot of evil to your people, to your saints at Jerusalem. And here he has authority from the chief's priest. So they know that he has authority to bind all who call on your name. The Lord says to him, go, for he's a chosen instrument of mine to carry my name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel. So here's the compare and contrast. Two very different situations, all right? And in one, you have Joseph going through something that is happening to Joseph. And God is going to use that, if you want to call it a persecution, you can call it a persecution. It's just sin, right? And it's somebody else's sin that happened to Joseph that led to God doing a greater thing, all things, right? In the case of Saul, you have somebody whose own sin, right? Okay, so this is a little bit different. And so in Joseph, it's somebody else's sin that's leading to this pivotal moment. But in the case of Saul, it is his own sin, and God is going to take that sin and flip it around and use that influence that Saul had over so many people that God was going to say, I'll even use Saul, a sinner. Oh, and he would call himself the greatest of sinners. And so we can't miss this because in this, in all things working together for the good of those who love God, who have been called according to his purpose. God's purpose often involves redeeming our sin and redeeming the things that had happened to us. He redeems all things. Don't miss out on the redemption of God and how he works through every single thing that happens. In my moment there several years ago, it was an amazing redemption, and I'm going back to getting this as a gift from people that I worked with, I should say. God redeemed that moment, which was a combination of something that happened to me and just bad choices I made along the way and things like that. Yeah. And God redeemed it. Often, however, we don't always see the redemption. And I love what Kathy says in her comment. She's watching along on the Backshed Bible Study Facebook page there. She says, we will all find out in heaven. And that is so true, because often we may not completely see his redemptive work happen in our time here on earth, and yet it will. And that's a promise. Okay. So I appreciate Kathy. I appreciate you mentioning that. And Candace, I really appreciate your comment that says, that's where I'm at. I can't even see how God is working in my situation right now. I guess that, right? It is so hard. We're in the midst of the darkness. And I've told you often about the story of Jerry Sitzer, who lost his mom, his daughter, and his wife in a car accident. And he really talked about that vision that he had of pursuing the setting sun and realizing that you would never catch up with the setting sun, that he needed to not be afraid to turn back and head toward the darkness. And in the depth of the darkness, you'll find the rising sun coming sooner. And so that's why I'm always telling people, don't be afraid to lean into the darkness. It's hard. Those are hard, dark times. And yet sometimes I have a guest that I'm really hoping to get on Backshed soon, because this guy described something that I've only been able to formulate in my own mind when he was going through, as a vision he had, but when he was in the midst of a very, very dark, hard time. In seeing God in such a clear way, brilliance. And I think back to my hard, dark times when I was in the middle of darkness, and yet I don't even know how to describe it except for to say, in darkness, I could see God in perfect living color. And that's a vision. That's something that's just almost impossible to describe, because it's just something that, as I think about God in the midst of darkness and yet being so clearly there, walking and carrying me through that. So with that, I hope today this can be an encouragement to all of us to keep on keeping on. I talked with a friend yesterday at church. She's been going through a long, hard battle with cancer. And quite a while back, I was compelled to just say, I can pray for healing, and I do pray for healing, but my greater prayer is for endurance, that God will grant you the strength to endure through hard times. And she just shared with me just how important that prayer was for her. And I come back to all of us and say, that's my prayer for you as you go through hard times. I pray that God will grant you endurance, that he will grant you strength. And then even for her yesterday, I said, and I'm praying that God will grant you peace in the midst of it. And so that's as we go through the hard times. Don't forget, all things work together for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. That's a very real verse, but it also means the all things sometimes really stinks. And that's okay, because we know God's at work. So don't lose hope, don't lose heart. He's got this. Let's pray. God, you are so good and so faithful, and I trust you, Lord, that you are at work in trials. And so help us, Father, to see you in the midst of the darkness, to see you and your real faithfulness that is there to provide step by step everything that we need for today. Help us to lean into your word, to trust your word that it is good, to trust you that you are faithful, and Lord, to know in our heart of hearts that you are always sovereign. And so we trust you today. We recommit ourselves to that today. Lord, may you be honored through all things. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. All right, and that is your encouragement today in from the shed today, and I pray that we'll be able to look back, see what God did. Right. So, for now, I'm on my way. I sure appreciate you all. Hope that you have an amazing day, and that you see God at work through all things. God bless you. Have a great week. See you next time.